game making stems from the desire to entertain and to tell stories. I come from an artistic background. Mostly music composition. I also wrote for theater, playwright. And one thing I noticed a lot, because I play a lot of games, like a lot of you I'm sure, was that a lot of story-based games, RPGs, text adventures, is dialogue. And really, a lot of game making, writing for games, is a lot like being a playwright. There's actually, I find something really magical about being able to construct an entire experience that the player interacts with so directly, like electronic theater, that they're the main character. So, I've been working on games ever since I got my hands into BASIC back in middle school, when I authored Elf. Yeah, it was somewhat underwhelming now. It was a text adventure with really, really bad ASCII. That despite its limitations, it has a password system, a soundtrack. It's really funny. And then my next attempt was a quiz game on photovoltaics or solar power, in which an angry computer named Mondo, basically threatened to kill you lest, if you answered 7th grade science questions on solar power. But there's been a slew of projects over the years, a whole train of good, bad, ugly projects that I've worked on. So really, it's been about 20 years. And during that time I've been, I guess, a serious hobbyist. But I've really been excited over the past decade to see this new trend. So it's this big thing now. But there's a number of cheap or free, easy-to-use editors, and you can make all sorts of games, especially 2D games. And it's amazing how sophisticated and powerful and flexible the tools are now, and how easy they are to use compared to, the old person card procedural-based, construct an engine in BASIC from scratch, get lamps, that kind of thing. It's kind of amazing. We're living in the future now. I never would have dreamt it. At the same time, you have this trend with the casual market exploding in a way that's staggering. So this whole new generation of players, like young people, women, and you don't have to be a gamer. You can play apps on Facebook or your smartphone, and it's a pretty exciting time to be a gamer and a game maker, actually. The neat thing is that there are all these gaps opening up in the market because of this bullshit. So you have new customers to serve, basically. So you need new people to serve them. So there's been also kind of a rise in the indie market at the same time, which is pretty exciting, at least to me. And the nice thing about projects that are authored by small companies or individuals is, while sometimes they lack the eye candy aspect, the polish, the technical complexity of the behemoth companies, your Bethesdas, your, commercial releases, you still have this sense that there's this excitement where whole genres are being formed, that experiments are happening that, frankly, a lot of commercial houses are unwilling to take risks on. And, some of them fizzle, but then you have your breakaway releases. So it's pretty exciting. Indie games are largely labors of love, but, like I said, some of them do make like $1 billion. Well, not really, but the nice thing about them is that they're born edition, the labors of love, and the risk. So anyway, getting back to what I said before, I've mucked around with a lot of engines. Really good ones, really bad ones, and everything in between. And today in my talk, I'm going to focus on what I consider to be my favorites, and the ones I found easiest to use. I wanted to focus on an introduction to game making, really. But hopefully, even if you have your feet wet, you might find something new. So, There are more powerful engines than what I'm offering out there, with more features, bells, whistles, power. But I wanted to focus on things that were, cheaper, free, and really, really easy to use. As a writer and musician, while I've learned to dabble with code in a limited capacity and I've programmed from scratch, like I said, the old procedural stuff, I come from more of an artistic, creative background. And so I tend to deal with tools that shortcut the process for me so I can get down to the fun part. And I prefer, so you're going to see like a bias here. I'm talking mostly about 2D game design today. The problem with 3D, as far as a game development standpoint, is it's really tough, especially with your first project, to be able to do it. And there's a whole exponential increase in difficulty between being a 2D designer and being a 3D designer. And crappy 3D is awful. Where, and it's so hard that 90% of 3D is crappy. Especially, like I said, you have the giant houses putting out flawless things. It's really, really hard. But if you were a 3D developer, my hat off to you because it's a tough thing. So anyway, I'm going to talk first about, let's see, kind of an interesting engine, and a lot of people haven't heard of this one. And I only really heard about it through looking for some resources for other engines. So this is RenPy, or RenPy, I should say. It's a visual novel engine. It's over 6 years old. Its website, because it has great web documentation, is www.renpy.org. And visual novels, if you're not familiar with them, are a genre that are largely text-based. So it's kind of, a lot of them are kind of game book-esque, like the Choose Your Own Adventures, where you have the dialogue and you've got like a character portrait, the background, and the player makes decisions during the course of gameplay, that affect points, that affect the outcome. So it's pretty cool, actually. It's actually visual novels, I like to actually mess around with this engine a lot, and not just make visual novels with it. The name, because it's kind of an unusual name with the, with the apostrophe in there and everything, comes from a mixture of Renai and Python. Renai is the Japanese term for a gaming sim, which is one extremely popular type of visual novel, both in Japan and here. And the Python, of course, is scripting language. The great thing is that it supports nearly all the features that a visual novel might reasonably be expected to have, including branching stories, saving, loading of games, rollback to previous points of the stories, variety of scene transitions, and so on. So it's fantastic for making visual novels if that's your particular thing. The nice thing is that the syntax they use, the Python, is actually very simple and easy to learn. The program, the core code is actually very well constructed. Everything is very very simple, easy to learn, and the actual input of what you do, while it is technically, this is a really, see, here, this is really simple. If you're looking down here, it's very much like a script. So what they've done here to display text is what they have this character key. That's the shortcut you can find in the initial block here, where they've done this to save on typing. But you could just type the character's name and then put the text here in quotes. So it's very much like writing a script, which is really good if you have a game that has a lot of text, because it's really easily imported. But the nice thing is that you can plop Python code in wherever you want. Just a simple announcement, so you can add advanced features, and it is completely interfaceable with Pygame. So if you have a friend who has something even if you're not fantastic at coding in Python, if you have a friend who has something you can work out a deal with a mini game or do anything like that, or if you're really good at Python already, you're way ahead of the curve. And they have tools in there to obfuscate your scripts and archive your game assets to mitigate copyright infringement. And they're not dependent on any other software once you actually produce a game in Recipe. So there's no need for your users to download runtimes, drivers, codecs, or anything like that. And let's see. Okay, just trying to make sure I get everything because I want you guys to read this here. Okay, great. So it's very flexible. It's really easy to make sims in Ren'Py, which is what I tend to use it for. With a very little bit of variable manipulation, which is really easy in Python. You can add a ton of gameplay value. You can do all sorts of sims. It plays movies and stuff, so you can do lots of things like there. And it's very good for text-heavy games. It's open source and it's free, even for commercial use. And they have a ton of facts and cookbooks online that are really easy to use, understand and pertinent. And it's authored in Python, so it supports Windows, Mac, Linux, and Android, which is a really big thing. So the nice thing too is the community, at least in my experience, is super helpful. There's a large number of creators, but since they're still kind of niche, they're very passionate about it, and they're very willing to help other people, which I like. And it's great. The problem with Ren'Py is that there are a few things. It comes with no graphical assets whatsoever. So all the art you need, you've got to either make yourself or commission the art. The nice thing about it is that you don't have to undo a lot of the work, which in a lot of the more ready-made engines you run into the problem that things are too formatted, things are too specific. The specs are pretty forgiving on it, so you don't have to have things exact in one size, and you can do things in a number of resolutions. The other thing is that it takes a bit of variable manipulation and or coding to make games other than a visual novel, like I said. But the tutorials are good, and it's not really that bad. If you have no coding experience whatsoever, it can be a little tough to be your first engine, but then again, it's probably good to start somewhere. So, the other thing is there's no default physics engine. So everything you do with an action component in Ren'Py has to be done with code. So it's very limited as to what it can produce, but it's very good for next everything. Okay, so the next is probably the most popular casual game engine out there right now. And I'm sure 95% of you have heard of RPG Maker. And the thing about RPG Maker sometimes is that it's changed a lot the last few releases. I actually was very jaded about RPG Maker for a while, because the first time I ever used it, it was a crack of the Japanese version. It was very poorly done, it was full of bugs. A lot of it wasn't very customizable. They just didn't have a scripting language or anything. But as of now, the two most current versions, the only ones available legally in the US, are free 30-day trial, $60 after that. You can use it for commercial use after that. But RPG Maker XP, it came out, I think, 2003. 2003? It was the first RPG Maker release to use Ruby. And understandably, when they implemented RGSS, is the Ruby Game Scripting System, that's the acronym. So it's like a Ruby program. Once they did that, it made it so you could script all manner of customization into the game, and it opened the capabilities of the tool up to something that you could actually do quite a bit of stuff with. Let's see. Yes. So that was something that was a big deal to me. This is RPG Maker XP program I was just talking about. I popped it up there originally. So basically, if you haven't used RPG Maker before, they have a few different graphical placement systems here that are really, really easy to use. Maps are super easy to make. It's just all like drag and, so you can, oh, that's not there. So you can just, place objects on the map and make your map really quick, and you don't have to mess around too much with it. Of course, I'm messing around a lot right now. But, there we go. All right, there we go. I haven't used RPG Maker, like, seriously for about a year, so it's really fun. You guys need to watch me do this. But you can make a map, and it's a really crappy map. There you go. It comes with, the nice thing about it is you can do that. RPG Maker in general, the 2 releases, they come with more than enough music and art to make a complete game. It's easy to use. It's really easy to modify the databases. Like everything that comes in here is just really simple to do. The problems with RPG Maker in general is that modifying the existing script can be really tricky unless you're experienced. But then again, there's a decent community out there. I find them less friendly than the Ren'Py community. And the other problem is even between the 2 RPG Maker versions that are out there, the XP and the VX, there's a significant difference in the way that modifying scripts need to be written for the versions because the methods are all different. And I think they did a bad job in making it suitable from one to the other, because it's pretty easy, especially if you're working in a couple different versions. The other problem is making anything other than an RPG takes a lot of monkeying around, a lot of undoing, either through events or scripting or some combination of both. RPG Maker it's event-based, so it works on the system maps here where you click and a whole bunch of event commands show up, and you kind of, it's neat because it's all visual, so if you're not a bunch of coding blocks, it's pretty simple. So if you want to show text, you show text here. If you want to show choices, you show choices here. It basically programs it for you a little at a time. And you can do a lot of things here. Actually, the neat thing is, it takes a long time to explain each program in depth, but essentially, it's kind of, rather than having to remember the syntax, you lay out the steps in order of what you want to accomplish within your script, and then it executes. So it's pretty neat that way, in that you at least don't have to worry about the detail orientation of the syntax, and that problem you find when you're running bugs. So you can either do a lot of things either through scripting or through events, which for people who aren't programmers sometimes are easy to work through because they're visual. And the neat thing is you start thinking like a programmer, so actual code becomes easier to deal with. Again, the problem with RPG Maker is there's no included physics engine for action games of any kind, and it would need to be scripted from scratch. So the differences between the 2 versions of RPG Maker XP and VX, XP named for Windows XP, it came out about the time that was, and VX is Vista and XP, so they released VX for Vista. But XP is extremely flexible in the way that it works. For example, let me show you something here. This is still like the sample game, so it's just like the default setting here, but it starts all its full screens. So this little guy, I hate the sprite, but this is the default hero they give you. Just like cruising around the map here. There are a whole bunch of character sprites, so you probably have a character sprite before, but if you haven't, that's character sprite. Within the game, if you wanted to change the main character, you go to Actors tab. That's Alexis. I hate him. You could look through. There's all this art in here. Like I said, there's a lot of art, and it takes. There's a long discovery process when you go through and you see how many graphics they've included that you can use commercially. But you can see Alexis, he's, you know, he's that size. And quite a big monster. Look how much bigger the goblin guy is. So there's not a standard size that you have to use, which can be kind of a pain in the butt if you don't have a lot of different variations. Some of the programs are very specific to the material set. And XP is really forgiving that way. So working with a sprite artist on an XP title is a lot easier if you're doing some custom sprites. So the downside to XP is it still requires an immense amount of attention to detail when you're working the event commands, because you can screw up anywhere in the process. You still have to remember, oh, when you're going to the inn, when you're making an inn event to subtract the gold or to heal the party. Like there are a certain number of steps. You have to tell it everything. Which, you know, as you're learning, you'll learn how to do that. So that's not too bad. But the thing about the sprites, as you can see, there's a high level of detail for 2D sprites on them, and they're really, really hard. If you're trying to sprite it yourself, I know this from experience, they can be very difficult to match the shading on them, and it's not an easy task. But that said, it's kind of a medicine ball. So if you can do the RPG Maker sprite, they're pretty detailed, and that particular template is unforgiving. So you'll end up being a pretty good spriter if you can master that. Okay, so the other version is RPG Maker VX. Again, free 30-day trial period, that's $60 to use it commercially. You can sell games with it. Some of the differences, you can tell already. Oh, one of my projects. Okay. This is just a demo of the game I'm working on. This is the one I have done. But you can tell, like, the graphical style of the assets that come with the main game. So actually, this is nice that you can actually see a project. Is more of a chibi style, which is like a Japanese style of art where people look like children, they're very expressive. So that's one big difference. A nice thing about VX is they have a quick event creation. So there's lots of, especially in RPGs, there's a lot of tedious things like creating a place where you can go through a door, like warping around. And even when it's not hard, and it's really not that hard to screw up once you know what you're doing, it takes a lot of time, and it's really boring. So what they have here is they'll set up an event. So you say, oh, I want a treasure chest with 25 gold in it. You put it there, open it up, and instead of having to every single time put this through, it does all this work for you. Which, you know, it's pretty easy to do, but it saves you a lot of time, and games take a lot of time. So you really don't want to do stuff like that. But if you want it to be a precise way, if you want a certain tone to play, like I had a problem on my project where the transfer steps up, like when you leave the screen, it was just way too loud. And they didn't have a really easy way to do that, so I ended up having to adjust it manually. And then I figured out how to do it. But, see, oh yeah, this is another good thing. So they have, get a new map here. Yeah, so I'm going to create a new map. Yeah, whatever, we're done. Okay, so, and this is another really lazy thing, but lazy things save time, which means you'll get your project done. So they actually have a dungeon generator. Oh, I gotta make the map bigger, this is so fun. Let's see, what do we want? We want all 35 by 30. Why not? Okay. So, I'm going to generate just a plain old dungeon. Oh, what do we want to make it look like? Let's make it look all grassy. Spring. Okay, yeah, so I'll pull out here. But, you know, it's not a very exciting map, but if you just want like a generic dungeon, if you want a long dungeon, a lot of times I'll find myself just plopping some of this down and then going in and, you know, like I'll just, you know, run rivers through things, or I don't have a mouse, so it's going to be entertaining. you know, just adorning things, like putting some like nice sketchy lines on the wall, or whatever. But it speeds it up again, which, especially if you're working your first project, you're trying to figure out who you are as a game maker, if you can get it done faster, it's better. Because honestly, a lot of times, like 98% of the time, your first project is going to be crap. But your second project, if you really keep going, is probably, you know, it could be wonderful if you're paying attention to why your first project is crap. The other good thing is that the sprites in VX have a lower level of detail. So yeah, that's my main character guy. All right. Can you see that okay? No, everybody can see on the screen. Okay. Since they're that chibi style, they're much easier to sprite. There are fewer colors involved. There's less shading. And some people really hate this style, but it's actually a lot easier to break into spriting wise. So if you wanted to try it, it's just a lot easier, it's a lot quicker. Let's see here. Okay, the bad parts about VX. I mean, yeah, the thing is that the materials have more precise specs. Like when I was talking before about XP sprites being able to be any size, VX has a default size. And it's very unforgiving that way. You have to be very specific how you specify. And like I said, the default chibi style isn't for everyone. And though the existing graphics and the character sets can be modified and replaced, they limit you to five tabs. So where XP has an unlimited number of different tile sets, if you're using VX, you're going to have to be clever about it. So that's one thing. If you want to have a lot of different map sets, VX won't let you do it. Though you could potentially script yourself to utility, but I suppose if you're scripting yourself to utility, you might not be here. Though, if you are, I think you're wonderful. Okay, let's see. Yeah, and the version is targeted towards more casual users, like more casual game developers. So that can be a bit off-putting. People have been doing it for a while, like the quick event creation, that sort of thing. Another good thing about the Expo, actually, is Entabrain they're the Japanese publisher that puts out RPG Maker. They have a blog, Tkool. Yeah, Tkool, yeah, Tkool.jp is the address. And they do updates, and they actually periodically release new graphic packs for the game. And you can have an unlimited number of character sprites. So maps are limited, but character sprites, you can have as many as you want. So they'll put out sets of, one that they did was a bunch of school children. They gave them different outfits for school sims. They did a bunch of new animals, stuff like that. And they all are able to be used in commercial projects. And actually, they just put out in Japan a huge graphics pack with big sets, monster battlers, music, everything. And it's available for about $30 in Japan, which is a conversion from yen. And it can be bought at Amazon.jp, but I haven't bought the pack yet. So I'm not sure it's compatible with the US version of RMVX, because it just came out. So anyway, that's RPG Maker. Super famous, but it's had a facelift. A lot of people didn't know about it, so that I've talked to. And then the last major platform I'm talking about is Game Maker, and they're up to Game Maker 8. Let's see here. The language that Game Maker uses is called, using the free version right now because I'm not developing anything in it at the moment. The language that Game Maker uses is called GML, which is Game Maker language. The light version is free. The pro version is currently $25. It's gone up and down in price. I just checked the price 2 days ago. It was $25 then. The difference between the light and the pro version, so what your $25 buys you, is in the free version, the Game Maker logo pops up when you're running a game. And the pro version gets rid of that. And when you're using the program in developer mode, regular pop-ups show up, register me, they get rid of that. In the pro version, you can use rotated, color-blended, translucent sprites. You can create splash scenes with movies, images, web page, text. They've got a good particle system. You can do explosions, fireworks, flames, rain, advanced drawing functions. You can create 3D games. I don't have any experience with that. I follow in the community. Some people are a little underwhelmed about its 3D possibilities, but I really don't know too much about that. They do advertise that you can create 3D games. And they have multiplayer functions, so you can do that with each draw. And there are more than that, though, and I know that Chris will be doing a talk on a project he made in GameMaker after me, so I'm sure he'll go into more detail on a lot of that. So from my point of view, the pros for using GameMaker is that there's a great online community who uses the program. Like, they're very active, very large communities. It's very easy to make arcade action-style games, especially. They have competent physics handling that's really easy to use. It supports mouse by default, which RenPy does as well. RPG Maker doesn't support mouse input. You end up trying to look at gamepad or keyboard. Fred mentioned that. And you can, the neatest thing, this is actually why I'm really interested in GameMaker, is you can make virtually any 2D game, any genre thinkable, even hybrids. It's very easy to shift between like a strategy game, real-time strategy, roguelike. And I've been kind of thinking about mixing genres a little bit. And the tutorial here is really good. I've done it before. I have GameMaker on my desktop too. But it takes you step by step through making like this basic arcade game with blowing up fruit, and it's very exciting. Well, you're supposed to catch fruit while blow you up, but it's nice. And a nice thing about the community being so large is a lot of people have made add-ons for it, which are essentially GameMaker projects. This is just one that I downloaded, which is the Golden Realm RPG engine, because I'm really interested in RPG and Sim primarily, and visual novels. Yeah, see the light edition. I have the laptop. So like this is just, you start with a pretty much a blank slate in GameMaker. There's no sample project. So yeah, this is basically a sample project they include where they've added, light bar, walking around. And this is a pretty basic one. They made this to be really, really editable, but the graphics are just kind of throwaway graphics that somebody plopped in there to give you an idea. It supports things like, you can walk that in there. All right, and like reading signs and well, anyway, and you can you can do combat and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of those add-ons out there. So the community's so large, they're really, really cheap. So it's very easy to get somebody to make a framework for you for GameMaker, basically. The con is that a large of what makes it so user-friendly is the drag and drop interface that they have here. See, like where you objects. Okay. Oh, okay, I'll create a room. Again, I'm not working in GameMaker very often. Actually, Chris will probably show you this. So, and I think I used this line. Yeah, okay. So actually, I'm gonna go past that. But the drag and drop it's really actually easy to use if you're immersed in it. But it can't do everything, and a lot of advanced functions require the scripting. GML is pretty easy to learn, but it can take a while to really fully understand it. And it's only used for GameMaker, so it's proprietary. And once you've learned it, You can do anything you want in Game Maker. People out there are Game Maker gurus, but it's not C, it's not Python, it's not Ruby. So there's that issue, and there are very few graphical resources included in the download, and they're pretty basic. So those are my views of this. I am looking forward to using it in the future. So, I've shown you a few things. There are a whole bunch more tools out there. It's really easy to do a search, find other ones, play around with them. But they're getting very easy to use. I've heard good things about Unity, haven't used it. That's another really good tool. Another one that I have played with a little is the XNA Game Studio, which uses C# for scripting. Right now they have a thing through the Xbox Creators Club where you can program for PC or Xbox, and they'll distribute it instantly, and they'll vend it for you, work out distribution deal for you, which is pretty neat. Problem with that one is it's difficult to learn. You have to know C#. But if you have a friend, sometimes that can work. And the Creators Club membership, to actually sell your games, you have to pay for a subscription. And it's like $49 every 4 months or $99 for a year. So if your game's selling, it's a really good deal, but it can be kind of tough otherwise. So, okay, well I covered that, and I think though, and these are the tools, but the tools are only as good as the person that uses them. So there are a number of things that you should do. These are just a few things that I've discovered, just kind of thinking about what worked for me and what didn't, as a creator in general. Gandhi says, be the change you want to see in the world. That's a famous quote by him. So I try to make the games I want to see in the world. So you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be able to look at the games you played and really think what made that game good. Beyond the eye candy, beyond the bells and whistles. Why did I play it? Why did I call into work for this game? You have to ask yourself this. Yeah, it pleases you to have your name on it, but like any work of art, like any creation, that can blind you to the reality of what your game is. Just because you made it does not make it a good game. And if you're going to put all of that time into the game, it should be something that someone else wants to play. Because I think games are really a dialogue between the creator and the player. It's not really a game without a player. Another quote is, with great power comes great responsibility. This is Spider-Man. So you have the tools. You need to really utilize them. Don't just think of how they were intended to be used. I mean, you guys are hackers or interested in hacking, so you understand this. You need to meditate on what you have available. Think, how can I apply this in a novel way? Do this for the ability of your engine. Do this for the features of your game. And do this in how you relate to people as a game developer. Another quote that's really helpful is from Picasso, which is, if you have 5 elements available, use only 4. If you have 4 elements, use 3. Which I take to mean you need to understand your limitations. It's important to stretch with your learning, but when you're actually putting your product out, you need to utilize what you've mastered and not a stitch more. So, one thing I see a lot with people's projects, when they're having a hard time really getting into the flow, really developing a good game, is they're not utilizing their resources properly. There are a number of untapped resources that are really easy to overlook. Everybody focuses on the engines, on the coding, on the tech. But the people you know are really important, not just gamers. Like, listen to the people you know. Like, listen to other works of art. Be inspired, be open to new ideas where you least expect them. That's really important. If you love games, chances are you are a gamer. You love video games. I should say, if you're looking to develop games, because it really requires a strong love affair, I think, with video games to really want to design one. So you clearly play games. Think about your favorite ones. Again, the ones that made you call into work. You need to think about what distinguished them from the rest. Why were they good? What specific mechanics did they use? Especially the ones you're able to emulate without a big budget or a big team. little things. What kept you playing for hours? So you kind of get into this introspective psychology of gaming. What'll be fun and addictive? Like I had a great time. Not that WoW is an indie game at all. It's not. It's like the opposite. But it's a game that I, like half the world, got addicted to. And it was kind of fun to analyze the loot system, like the risk versus reward system, to kind of compare it with other risk versus reward, other MMOs, and see kind of the rhythms that emerge. Like that kind of thing can be especially good for balancing games, which is really important. This is a big one. One thing that people don't really utilize a lot of times is other people. Your social skills, your people management skills. One of the things that can make you a great game developer, it's been a long day, is if you can manage a team. And that'll be one of the best skills you can have, because being able to manage other people, being able to select people, help you work with projects and work with them and communicate with them is an amazing resource. It's really limitless. Another thing that people don't think about a lot, they're thinking about specs, is dialogue within the game, writing skills. It's not just a matter of talent. You know, writing dialogue and story is a tool that's free. Once you've really honed your skills, it's free, you use it everywhere, and it's incredibly powerful, regardless of what sort of game you want to make. Even the big 3D releases from Bethesda, you know, your Dragon Ages, and, well, that's not a Bioware, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, they're really dependent on dialogue these days, and gamers are used to that. You know, there's very little of the old, you know, one-liner in English type of thing. So, and it's useful in other fields. So a few things that you can do to help you with that are obviously playing indie games, but you'd be surprised how many people haven't played any indie games that are trying to make indie games. It's important to support the industry, of course, that goes without saying, but you'll also learn volumes about clever ways to do things, like you'll see workarounds in action, and you'll see it without the resources or the budget of the larger house, and it's really fun. I mean, you know, and yeah, it's an excuse. Say, get away from me, I'm working. The next thing, I think this is really super important, is that you need to continue to improve your skills. Skills related to game making, all of those things I just talked about, not just your coding. Even things you aren't good at, that you have no hope of ever being in charge of on your own project. You know, say you can't draw at all. You should take classes. Adult Ed is really good. They're very cheap. Or you can take join forums online and study that way. But drawing classes, basic music background, you know, just a simple music theory class, writing classes, all of those things. Because even if you aren't going to be the one executing that part of the project, you know, you're not going to write the music, you're not going to write the dialogue, you have a great friend that does one or both of those things. If it's your project, you need to know enough about the quality if it's going to have your name on it. So you need to be able to accurately assess that and select someone who can do that for you. So I have a few minutes left. Each of the engines I showed you today actually have commercial games out by smaller companies, which I just have them here. And they're very much geared towards the kind of 8-bit nostalgia, 16-bit nostalgia. I guess I have that now. It's kind of cheap. Casual gaming market. That's kind of my niche. So let's see. Renko is the first one I talked about. This is Bionic Heart. My type of games. They do a lot in the Flower Shop, a lot of sim games. This is great. This game is great because it's fully voice acted. Oh, Renpie can play sound files, so it's very easy to put voice acting in. This is just a game. So you can kind of see Renpie in action a little bit here. And this is basically a visual novel. This one is pretty, yeah. I talk all about good dialogue and not skipping it. But you can see like they move the screens. And then there's the character. This one's fully voice acted. And she basically, in this one, she's pressuring you to get married. She wants to know, why are you going to marry me? So you either have to take your time or say, hey, why don't we live together? Instead to dodge the bullet, and she reacts. So yeah, the possibilities are kind of limitless. They do it a lot for dating sims because it's kind of an established genre, but there's a lot of different things you can do. They actually have Vera Blanc out right now, which is a detective series, film noir, and you do like mysteries. And actually, if you've ever played Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, they have it on DS and Wii. Really easy to do that kind of thing in Ren'Py. You call it Ren'Py. Especially if you know somebody that can script a little bit for you, or you can learn Python, which is really easy to learn. So it was Ren'Py, and then, oh yeah, RPG Maker, XP. This is Avion. Avion is huge right now. They're all over. I have it on my desktop. I just have the free trials on here because I didn't want to buy it again. But. Yeah, Amaranth they've done Grimm's Hatchery, they've done Avion series and stuff, so this is Avion. Easy mode, I guess. Let's skip intro. Yeah, so, that makes me say something. How condescending, okay. So yeah, this is just to give you an idea. You saw kind of when I was in XP editor mode, this is how a nice map looks. And it's the character and everything, and you can get to battles and fight and everything. This game is right now on Shockwave, along with 4 or 5 other sequels. So they're getting really wide distribution right now. They're making a ton of money off that hatchery. They have a big web presence. And for VX, this is Eternal Eden by Blossom Soft. He's actually French-Canadian, I believe. Comes through a little in the translation. But he right now, they just put out a sequel. This game is actually, what? Okay. It's actually a story about kind of I think I did start the tutorial. This is the problem trying to talk to you guys and actually run this at the same time. I need an assistant. Thank all of you. So yeah, it's a story about some kids that end up eating the fruit of this tower, and it throws the world into dystopian chaos. And it's actually a really good game. They got the balance right. A lot of the mechanics are really cool. They use the engine well. You can kind of see the character portraits and the particle effects. So this is all very easy to do, but it looks pretty good, very solid. Okay, I just go in. Okay, they skipped the part where I learned to do stuff. Well, anyway. And then this is the last, because this is about as much time as I have. It's actually working out really well, right, Justin? Game Maker. And there are a number of different games. This is a game called Cube Night, very girly. It's actually kind of a version of, I don't know how many people are familiar with Princess Maker, the Korean game. It made a ton of money over there. There's been a lot of translations here, but it never actually made it here. So what they did, the studio, is they basically made kind of a Princess Maker-esque spin-off for the U.S. and made a ton of money doing it. And it's just like a life sim where this girl and you're trying to find her fortune. Actually, a little girly for me even, but apparently it's made a lot of money with little kids. So yeah, there are these are just a few. I have dozens of indie games on my desktop making these engines. There are a lot of arcade games made on Game Maker 2 out there right now. I think actually Chris's Boogie, is kind of an arcade style game, right? Yeah. So you'll see a lot more of that, but I wanted to cover kind of the casual thing, show you some options. It's really good, especially if you're just kind of cutting your teeth and getting used to game development, to try something that's pretty easy. But yeah, game making is really easy to break into. It's really fun to discover what kind of game maker you are and where your talents lie. So anyway, I'm Paige McKay. I'll be at the con all weekend, and if you have any questions at all for me about game making, I will do my darndest. I've been mucking about for a while now, and I feel like I have no time to tell you all the things I want to tell you. But thank you very much.